For most people, getting exposed online would probably be enough to make them disappear forever. Maybe change your name, delete your accounts, move to another state, become a guy who sells mattresses in peace. Anything. Nova Online apparently had a different idea. After years of controversy, drama, failed friendships, and enough internet lore to fill an entire landfill, Nova didn't exactly fade into obscurity. Instead, things somehow started getting even worse, and recently, that escalation reached the point where people actually showed up outside his house. This became known as the Novine takeover, and the funniest part is that Nova was actually live when it started happening, so while most people would probably hear a crowd forming outside their home and immediately experience a spiritual awakening, Nova had to find out about it in real time.
YouTube comments that ended up in the harassment files admitting to oh shit-ish. Oh shit-ish. Oh shit-ish, they're here. Someone's right outside of my property.
At that point, you can practically hear the gears grinding. Nova had gone from talking about internet drama to realizing that the internet had physically arrived at his front door. And apparently, the event had been organized as a peaceful protest by people who had grown tired of Nova's antics. Which is already an incredibly strange sentence, because when you hear the words peaceful protest, you generally imagine people holding signs, chanting, maybe somebody playing a drum badly. You don't usually imagine a bunch of people standing outside a TikToker's house while the TikToker is live streaming his own reaction to it. But that's exactly what happened. Nova eventually ended his stream and went outside, presumably to figure out why there was suddenly a small gathering outside his property. Unfortunately for him, the protesters were filming too.
Oh yeah, the big N. There's his house. Yeah, his...
No, it's that one.
Oh wait. Okay. Hold on.
Flip the camera. Flip the camera, man!
Nova Online house.
Somewhere in the middle of all this, Nova was apparently less interested in peaceful conflict resolution and more interested in letting everyone know exactly how he felt about them being there.
Camera! Camera! Camera!
Hey, Nova, look at camera! Oh my goodness.
Did you not hear about the takeover?
Can we come in?
At this point, the whole thing had become less like a protest and more like the world's strangest neighborhood watch meeting. Even Nova's neighbors apparently weren't thrilled about the situation. And honestly, that's probably understandable. Imagine spending years paying rent or a mortgage, minding your own business, and then one random afternoon there's a crowd outside your neighbor's house because the guy next door has somehow accumulated an entire internet mythology. That would be a pretty difficult explanation to give your landlord. But here's where the story gets interesting, because the takeover wasn't actually the most important thing happening around Nova at the time. While all of this was unfolding outside his house, someone new had already gotten surprisingly close to him behind the scenes. And unlike the people outside his home, this person wasn't there to protest. She was actually working with him. And at first, according to her own account, she didn't think Nova was that strange at all. That would change pretty quickly. The woman had only known Nova for less than a month, which is probably about the amount of time you'd want to spend around any internet personality before deciding whether you've made a terrible mistake. At first, though, she said things were surprisingly normal. They played Fortnite, they talked about his paracord business, they would get on calls and work on different projects together. And according to her, there wasn't anything particularly alarming about him.
We played Fortnite before that. Like it was all chill up to this point. There was genuinely nothing weird.
She even described him as being relatively chill, just weird. Which, in hindsight, is probably the most dangerous sentence anyone can say about a person in an internet documentary, because he's weird can mean almost anything. Maybe the guy collects spoons, maybe he sends you pictures of his toes, maybe he has a 400-page manifesto about why pineapple belongs on pizza. There is a massive spectrum. But the first real turning point came when Nova started teaching her how to make paracord bracelets. This sounds completely harmless, and it probably would have remained that way if Nova had simply shown her the technique and gone to bed like a normal human being. Instead, according to her account, the calls kept going. She'd try to leave, he'd ask her to stay, then he'd show her another weave, and another. Eventually, it was around 3 in the morning. She described being exhausted and repeatedly trying to get off the call, only for Nova to keep asking her to stay. And then the conversation became more personal.
And then he then I did the same thing, like, I'm gonna hop off, I'm just really tired. And then he's like, no, you have to stay for this one too. I was on camera at that point, and I was like, it doesn't matter. He's seen me at this point, so we're just chilling, talking, and he's just doing the paracords. And when he saw that, he's like, oh my, you're so fucking pretty.
She said she thanked him, although the situation became more awkward when he started suggesting that she come down to Idaho. At first, she apparently interpreted it as a joke, and honestly, that's understandable. If somebody you've known for a couple of weeks suddenly tells you that you should move across the country to be their paracord associate, the natural assumption is probably that they're fucking around. But Nova kept bringing it up. Eventually, it stopped sounding like a joke. She explained that he would repeatedly apologize for being pushy before immediately being pushy again.
And then he mentioned, I thought it, as a joke at first, he's like, oh, you should come down to Idaho.
Then he'd bring it up again, and again, and again. At some point, maybe you should move here had apparently evolved from a random comment into an actual relocation strategy. Nova had already been talking about being afraid of getting kicked out of his home, so the idea seemed to have a practical purpose from his perspective. He needed somewhere to go, and apparently, his new business associate was becoming Plan B. The more she talked about it, though, the more bizarre the arrangement became, because while all of this was happening, people online were already warning her about who she was dealing with. She started receiving messages telling her that Nova was a creep and that she should stay away from him. Initially, she didn't believe them. She didn't have any evidence, so she did something that, in retrospect, was probably the worst possible thing for Nova's reputation. She asked them to show her the evidence, and one person gave her 2 words that would completely change the relationship: Nova files. And this is where the relationship started falling apart, because up until this point, she had basically been operating on 2 completely different versions of Nova. There was the Nova she personally knew, the guy who played Fortnite, taught her how to make paracord bracelets, complained about being broke, and apparently really wanted her to move to Idaho. Then there was the Nova that strangers on the internet were warning her about. And because she hadn't personally seen anything that matched those warnings, she had no reason to immediately believe them. So when someone told her to look up the Nova files, she decided to actually investigate. The person directed her toward a creator who had compiled information about Nova, including material surrounding one of the more infamous pieces of footage associated with him. And after watching it, her entire perception apparently changed.
Someone commented, there was a couple people, and they said like, well, you don't know any of this. And I was like, no, I haven't seen anything crazy. Can you guys show me? And then this one person said like, oh yeah, just look up the Nova files, because that will give you everything you need. And then I was like, okay, thank you. Like, I will watch that. And he directed me to a guy starting with an S on there, Solidus. I think that, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So he directed me to that, like, oh, Solidus is all the information.
Okay.
And I did post something like, if and when I see tangible evidence, I will take Bloodspeth up on that interview.
That's important because she wasn't claiming that somebody simply told her Nova was bad and she immediately believed them. She wanted evidence first. And once she started looking into it, the relationship didn't exactly survive. But before that happened, Nova had apparently already started trying to control what information she was exposed to. According to her account, he specifically discouraged her from watching negative videos about him, particularly material surrounding the Nova files, which, if you're trying to convince someone that the internet is lying about you, telling them not to watch the evidence is probably not the strongest legal defense strategy. It's basically the internet equivalent of putting a giant sign on a door saying, "Do not open." Naturally, people are going to open it. And once she did, the entire situation started looking different. The Idaho plans looked different. The late night calls looked different. Even the constant conversations about Nova's personal problems started looking different. And then there was the food, because apparently, while all of this was happening, Nova had also developed a very reliable method of getting people to send him things. He'd tell them he was struggling. He'd mention that he didn't have much money. He'd talk about his mother. And according to the business associate, she genuinely believed Nova was struggling. And there was another reason she felt sorry for him. Nova had told her that his mother was seriously ill. He allegedly told her that his mother had developed gangrene and had eventually undergone an amputation.